Pod in My Noggin, hosted by CK Sims, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
To another episode of Pod My Noggin. I'm your host, CK Sims, and today we are going to talk about one of my favorite things. And to do that, we have Helen Sernett. Did I say it correctly?
You got it.
Perfect. Helen, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
CK, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be part of this experience for your audience.
Yes. So what is one of my favorite things? I wonder the audience is probably curious about. I have many favorite things, but the one we're going to talk about today is sleep. And yes. You are a sleep guru? Would that be like a
I like
cool...
to say a sleep evangelist. Like, I don't know all this stuff about sleep, but I am going to tell you how awesome it is.
Oh, I really like that a lot. Kind of like nail on the head, sort of as what an evangelist would do.
Right.
Take us back. Where did this begin? How did this come about?
So little itty bitty Helen had no trouble falling asleep. And as she got older, she found in her 30s and early 40s that sleep was becoming more and more evasive. So eventually I had insomnia. That wasn't really the primary problem that I was thinking about as a person experiencing it. I was like, yeah, whatever, I have trouble getting to sleep, but like I've got this hypertension and I'm tired all the time and I'm having brain fog and I'm feeling depressed. And like, so the list went on and on. There's actually, one time I wrote it all down on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of like college ruled paper, and there was a symptom on every single line, like a diagnosis or a symptom on every single line. And so when I did that, I was like, can we knock some of these out all at once? And my doctor was like, yes, with sleep. I was like, really? She's like, yeah, you need to sleep. And I started to figure out that I needed to sleep. Like, I needed to change what was going on inside my brain because I was having really depressive and not productive thoughts. And I started to research about brains because I felt like, okay, this is just now my new norm forever and I hate it and it sucks to live. And I had enough people around me that were like, no. And I started looking at like, okay, why is my brain doing this? And it's like, can my brain change? The answer is yes, your brain can change. Sleep helps your brain change. All the things that you want to do, sleep helps with.
So what was your brain doing?
So, I just had really negative self-talk and very aggressive depression. So I think some people talk about depression as being kind of like a voice inside your head that's talking like not nice to you for always and forever. It's like a little abuser that lives inside of your brain. And that's basically what I had. It was like every time I wanted to try to do something, they were like, why the hell bother? And, you're not good enough for that. And you suck at stuff. And it didn't matter how much evidence I had to the contrary. My brain was saying, no, you suck. And
that's what depression does though, right?
Yeah.
So like, I always form depression as someone who likes to sell lies.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that's what depression does. It tells you lies constantly.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So that's what my brain was doing. And I was like, I would like my brain to not do that. And everything that I looked at and everything that I talked to my therapist about in terms of changing that really was like, it's a habit and you just have to rewire your brain. So your brain has gotten into this habit. It's myelinated these negative synapses. They're like a superhighway now. And so you're just getting these negative thoughts constantly thrown at you, but you still probably have other backcountry roads hanging out in your brain that you could in fact turn into superhighways if you practiced. Well, to practice something, you have to bring it forward in your mind, which means you have to have the energy to do that. And it takes time and energy, none of which I had because I wasn't sleeping. Also, the only time that your brain can myelinate synapses effectively and efficiently is when you're sleeping. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to help out my brain and not live in this horrible soup of depression for the rest of eternity or until I decide I don't want to live anymore, I need to sleep. So that's when I got really into trying to get sleep and finding it really, really hard. So, like, I knew I was having trouble falling asleep, but I sort of didn't care, whatever. My depression was keeping me awake. My depression was helping me, like, do all kinds of negative things. And so I realized that I didn't have any tools in my sleep toolbox. Like, the drawer was empty, and I had to figure some stuff out. I found edible gummies were really helpful. Like pot
Mm.
gummies were great, but then to help get my depression to go the hell away, I started taking antidepressants and they did not react well with the gummies. Like the gummies and the antidepressants did not both work at the same time, and I needed the antidepressant to work because that was important to me. And so I was like, okay, I still need to get sleep to like actually practice this and like get to a point where I don't need the antidepressant. So what can I do? And I tried all kinds of stuff, audio podcasts, stories. I tried meditation. I tried yoga. I tried different supplements. The bottom line was very little helped, but the thing that helped the most was audio stuff. I just couldn't find one that I liked. So then I recorded it, and that became my first episode of the Sleepless podcast.
So it's really interesting, actually, because like as you're telling your story, I'm not sure if you've watched my podcast or not, but it's really just fascinating and interesting how you brought up some really key things. I was opposite you, but similar. So you had great sleep growing up, and in your 30s was like sleep was not.
It went away.
It went away. Before 35. I don't remember a time where sleep and I were good friends.
Oh, wow.
We were sort of passing acquaintances.
Yeah.
And I would go to bed. When you're younger, you go to bed at like 8 o'clock. Well,
Yeah.
maybe by 2, I'd finally fall asleep.
Oh, wow.
This got worse as I became a teenager, adolescence, all of that sort of thing. And then when I became an adult, it was intensified because of the anxiety and the depression. And so but it was a good solid 35 years of just sleep being completely elusive to me.
Well, and one of the things I've learned is anxiety and depression can be a symptom of insomnia.
Fair.
So
Yeah.
and it's like metabolic at the metabolic level. If your body's not able to like regularly clean out toxins, which it does the most when it gets all types of deep sleep, and if it's not doing that, all of that toxicity builds up and it impacts your brain as well. Particularly happens in your brain, and so like all of your good pathways get sort of blocked up with toxins and the waste of just thinking, because just to think your cells produce waste, and it has to be cleaned out, and the only time it can happen is during sleep. Anyway, the point being is that really leads to depression and anxiety and all kinds of inflammation as well, which also leads to depression and anxiety. But yeah, it's really interesting how connected it all is.
It's interesting, yes. And what I find interesting is the comparisons, because I too, at 35, had to cognitive restructuring, right? It's what it's called in psychological terms. And I refer to my negative self-talk prior to 35 as a dumpster fire, and always had been. And it's interesting you said superhighways, because I'm like, they really were superhighways. And what I loved about what you said is like there's some backcountry roads that are probably still there. For me, it was more not backcountry roads, because I don't remember having a positive mind frame ever.
Yeah.
I had to make cow.
Yeah. You had to start just trudging through.
Absolutely. And then now, we're looking at 8 years later. Those pathways that I made are now super highways. So,
Yeah.
so it is the practice and the repetition that changes the way your brain operates. So fascinating. And
Yeah.
how old were you when you recorded? So, for anybody who's curious, you'll see Helen's name, and next to it in brackets, you're going to see sleepless.com. Sleepless.com is the name of your podcast. So,
Yeah,
you
this is the
were
website
looking
where
at,
yeah. You can
okay,
get the
yes.
podcast wherever, like you can get it wherever you get your favorite podcasts. But if you're looking for additional sleep resources, more information about me, or to listen to the episodes, you can do all of that at sleepless.com.
So, your podcast is called Sleepless as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, it's interesting to me that you were looking for like podcasts and music and different things. You said you tried pot gummies, but they didn't work with the antidepressants. And I was like, did you try sleeping pills?
Didn't. I have tried over the counter, like antihistamine based sleeping pills, and I find that I'm extraordinarily sensitive to them. Even the pot gummies, like one gummy, is just this little coin-sized gummy, and I would use 1/5 of one gummy, and I think a gummy had like 10 milligrams in it, and I was using like 1/5 of that. So I'm just kind of hypersensitive to these things, and so I did not want to explore prescription sleep aids, and my doctor wasn't particularly enthusiastic about starting me on an antidepressant and a prescription sleep aid at the same time.
Makes me think that you might be a slow metabolizer
Oh,
when it comes
probably.
because I am with
Yeah.
medications. But I have tried every single sleep medication that exists. Well, that existed up until I was 35. There's probably more now. You know what I mean? But I haven't taken them. I am on a steady, um, just nightly dose of melatonin and have been for like 8 years. I don't know what will happen if I stopped. I've missed a couple nights and
You
it's been
should. Like, you
fun.
should plan, like, every quarter or so, like, a few days to a week where you're like, nah, I'll take a break. It'll help it be even more effective later. That's the recommendation with melatonin. But the thing about using sleep aids, like especially prescription sleep aids, do whatever you need to do if you're not getting sleep, like absolutely to get any sleep, but it's still considered disordered sleep until you
Mhm.
can sleep without the support of that. And it does interrupt several of the deep sleep cycles to use a sleep aid, like a pharmaceutical sleep aid. And so even when I was using the gummies, they probably weren't the best choice for me. But again, I just needed any kind of sleep. It is better to figure out a way, like over time, once you start getting some sleep, to figure out how to fill up your toolbox with other tools besides pharmaceuticals.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that's it. I think when you don't sleep well, you get desperate, right? Like you
Yes.
become desperate because it's
Uh-huh.
sleep affects 100% of your entire being. So for me, I just want to point out, just anybody who's actually listening, is I also have sleep apnea. So that also
Oh,
contributed to
so you just weren't,
changing.
like, not even when you did sleep could you actually get what your body needed.
It was really brutal.
Yeah.
Yes, it was really brutal. But like even when I started sleep apnea therapy, I still wasn't sleeping, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But
Oh, and then you had to learn how to deal with the sleep apnea therapy on top of not being able to sleep. It's a whole nother thing. Yeah.
well, that was I got the machine and tried it a couple nights and stuck it into a closet for a year, and
Yeah.
then finally was like, I need to figure this out. So, Sleepless, your podcast, you couldn't
Yes.
find anything that helped you fall to sleep, which
Right.
I find fascinating because not that you couldn't find anything, but like I always find it fascinating when people can fall asleep to dialogue or
Yeah.
music because my brain cannot. Like I spent 35 years with voices in my head that kept me awake. So I'm like I do not need voices.
Well, That's what was interesting for me is like I needed the voices inside my head to shut up, so I needed a voice from outside of my head to quiet it, like to basically force my brain to pay attention to the outside words and not the inside words. I don't know how it works for visual processors, like people who tend to like say that they drift off thinking of images or like visualizing things, because I'm not much of a visualizer. Okay, you are. I am much more like it's all about the words. So I've got voices going on in my head saying stuff and I'm like, shut the F up.
Mm.
And the only way I could figure out to do that was external, but to have external audio. But that external audio would then get so interesting that I wouldn't fall asleep. So if it was like a sleep meditation, I'd be trying to make sure I was doing my absolute best to be the perfect person and meditate like I was supposed to be. If it was a story, I'd be like, well, it's a story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. I gotta listen to the end. Like someone took the time to record this. I know they said it's to help me go to sleep. And then I just get angry at them for like talking around and around and around in circles, which was literally the point of their long story sleep podcast. And I just get mad at them because I'm like, you're wasting my time and I can't even sleep now. I hate you. So I didn't find those helpful. I know lots of people do. They're not my thing. What I wanted was somebody to count to me. I wanted someone to just count quietly, steadily, soothingly from 1 until I fell asleep. That's what I wanted. And so that's what became the first episode of Sleepless, was me with my voice counting very steadily and regularly and calmly in a sweet, soothing voice, like I would talk to a child until I went to sleep. Yeah, that was the first one. So that's what I needed. And when I was a kid, I used to count myself to sleep all the time. That was one of the tools in my toolbox, but I couldn't do it for myself anymore internally at the point of insomnia that I had. I can actually do it now internally because I've gotten better sleep and my insomnia is kind of in remission. But yeah.
So are you, I'm having a moment. Are you saying that people actually like count sheep? Like, is that
Yes.
for real? For real?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They visualize the sheep and then they think about it and they count it as it goes from one side of the fence to the other. Yeah, I actually have a whole episode on different breeds of sheep because there's over 700 breeds of sheep. And so my list is just a list of all of the breeds of sheep to help you go to sleep.
Oh my gosh.
It's a little tongue in cheek.
But my brain's trying to compute. I've heard this, seen it, I've saw it in TV, movies, referenced a million times, but I never actually thought that someone actually counted while they were sleeping. I feel like
my husband doesn't get it either. He's like, that's the most annoying thing in the world. How could you possibly use numbers to put you to sleep? What?
How high do you get?
500.
Oh my gosh. Okay. And
it's a whole flock.
Your podcast, how high did you go in your first podcast?
500.
Oh my gosh. With that, we're going to take a break and we're going to be right back.
Life in Stitches by C.K. Sims. Available for purchase in paperback and ebook on all major platforms. Partner today with C.K. Sims and Pod in My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content, aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. This spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? One that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles? Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
Welcome back, everybody. Before the break, we were talking to Helen, who kind of blew my mind. Actually, I'm still blown. That sounded terrible. Um,
CK's top has exploded. There's no more head.
so, okay, we were talking about Helen's journey with sleeplessness, if you
Yeah.
will, my journey as well. And then we discovered that I didn't realize this. I'm still processing. My wheels are turning. So, you wanted someone to count sheep for you. This podcast did not exist. And so
Correct.
you decided to record a podcast
Yes.
of you counting sheep aloud with a soft, soothing, constant voice.
Constant voice, constant meter, and the beat is basically 60 beats per minute so that it is in the vein of your heartbeat. So that tends to be a very soothing pace.
So, okay, give me a minute of this. Like, let's, off the top, let's try something. I'm
so
putting you
like-
on the spot.
Yeah,
but-
no, like if you were going to do it, so like when I count or when I say something, like if it's a list of objects, like say, I don't know, list of objects in my studio, we could say, you know, acoustic tiles, circle lights, water bottle, laptop. And I would just keep on doing that. So there's like a little 5-beat rest in between each word. The words themselves just kind of like flow, you know, they're just like, there's a list. I usually have a very specific order because a lot of people who are meticulous, I'll say meticulous, listen to my podcast and get a lot of benefit from it. And so at the very top, I explain what the category is, how I've ordered it, and why I've ordered it that way so that they don't have to worry or wait or be concerned about like what's coming next or what's happening. And then I go into the list, and the list will last anywhere from 15 to 65 minutes.
But I love that you're so thoughtful about it. Like, at the top, you list the category and the order and why and what's going to come next to remove any sort of like apprehension or like whatever.
Anxiety. Yeah.
That's okay. So we got to close the gap. We have, and I have to have a sip. So.
Oh, I drink all the time. I'm like, stay hydrated. It's good for your skin.
Yes. Okay. So the podcast started this way because there was a gap in the market, if you will.
Yes.
Like an open niche.
Yes.
And then when did you do this? When did this start?
I started recording the podcast probably late 2022, 2023. Yeah, somewhere in there. Early 2023.
And is there a regular cadence?
No, I do seasons of 6 episodes, and then when I get inspired, I do another 6 episodes. Like, I should have a regular cadence, but I don't.
But no, I guess in this particular, I'm getting hooked on something. Apologies. But in this particular instance, it's not about entertainment specifically, as it is creating something that works for
for my listeners. So they still listen, and they have their favorites. Like each one has their favorite, you know, one that they'll listen to on repeat for a while.
Well, because if it works, I'm imagining like, oh my god, that one worked really well, and I'm going to listen to that again. I wonder if
some of the longer ones, like I did one that were like the top, I think it was the top 500 boys and 500 girls' names. So it ended up being a list of 1,000. So it was a really long list. And so people just like fast forward through to like a new spot, and they'll start, and then they'll listen until they fall asleep. And then when they start it up again, they'll just forward to a new spot. So they're listening to different stuff, even though it's the same podcast.
And do you do it like straight, or do you edit, or?
I do edit. Because it's hard. Like with a list of 1,000, you're gonna, I don't know, get your tongue tied or
you're gonna get dry for sure.
Yeah. So I do some very light editing, but essentially I do it straight through.
I find it fascinating. So fascinating. I actually kind of want to find Sleepless, and like just listen. Because now I find it really fascinating. Because when you were doing it just a second ago, with the way you enunciated the words, and you were laptop, like that, and then the beat, the down 5 beat, then the word 5 beat, like I felt calm in
Yeah,
that
there are a lot of
moment.
people who have told me that they will turn on a episode that they particularly enjoy in the day as well, like just to give them a little moment of zen. Like they'll just listen to like, 10 minutes of an episode just to have a little breather in their day.
But who doesn't need breathers and zen in their day
Yeah.
right now, right? So
Yeah.
so that's fascinating. So you also write a blog on sleepless.com.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
every episode I try to put a little something together to explain more about the episode, give people some background. Every once in a while there'll be something that I just find interesting and so I'll put that out there, but it doesn't have a regular cadence either. I'm a really bad internet personality in terms of regularity.
I don't know if I'd use that word bad. I think everybody's different and
Yeah.
everybody's creativity comes at different times. And yeah, I think just be you, right? Authentically.
Yeah.
Um, and then you also list sleep resources.
Yeah, I have some resources on that page too on sleepless.com. Just some very basic support pieces of information, things that have been put together by different sleep institutes or health institutes, as well as some resources of people that have helped me on my journey or that I have particularly found supportive in what they're sharing or what their books are. So, yeah, those
Love
things.
this.
Yeah.
So now here's the $1,000,000 question. So you struggled with sleep. You created Sleepless.
Mm-hmm.
You've been doing that for a few years now. You mentioned earlier that you've now gotten back to a point where you can count your own self to sleep.
Yeah.
You built up your toolbox.
Yeah.
So, what does life look like for you post fixing your sleep?
Yeah. So I will say that it was a journey and it continues to be a journey. Like I don't get a good night's sleep every single night, but I get many more better night sleeps, right? Like so cumulatively, I don't suffer from insomnia anymore. I occasionally will have a bout of it and I just am better about knowing like, all right, I'm going to give in because like my brain is really active right now, but I have limits, right? I have guardrails on it in terms of do I turn on the television? No. Like I never turn on a screen. I never turn on a light to full power. Like if I wake up in the middle of the night and can't sleep, I I put things down on paper. Like I have to actually write my thoughts on paper and to like get them out that way. Like I don't turn on my computer and type them. So anyway, those are those things. I took about a year off of like any work to really work not just on my insomnia but on my overall health. Like I
Mm-hmm.
called it my year of convalescence. Like I really felt like like oldie timey people put themselves like when they had tuberculosis they'd go and get the fresh airs at a convalescence like home. I felt like I did that to myself. Like I basically was like, I'm going to take a year to do some convalescing. And then this past year, I've taken some time to focus on what I really like to do professionally, how I want to like move forward in my career. And so I speak about sleep on stages, but I also do a lot of voice work. So I'm a voiceover actor and artist. Um, and so I'm honing those skills. And so my day to day looks a lot better. And my overall health profile is looking better. Like the list of symptoms is no longer a full page long, but I'm definitely not in a place yet where I feel like I've reversed all of the damage that not getting enough sleep and having lots of stress in my life created. So it's still a journey.
Well, and I think that that's something that everybody needs to remember, regardless of where you are. If you're trying to heal yourself physically, if you're trying to heal yourself mentally from whatever may have ailed you to begin with, it's not a point A to point B and then you're
Mm.
done situation. It's healing is growth. And we will never fully grow into the person that we're truly meant to be until the day we leave this earth because we're always growing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We're always refining things. So even for me, I my method, and I'm actually realizing there's some correlations to what I do to what you do. So I daydream
Mm-hmm.
and just sort of fantasize about the future and fun things and like live out these wild sort of like adventures in my brain. And that's when I fall asleep to, which
Yeah.
then often lends to very wild dreams as well. So, but,
Yeah.
um, but my method, once I realized, okay, I had the sleep apnea and I was getting the mental part under control, was I decided that I never had a good sleep and I'm just going to force it on me. And it sounds so terrible. But here's what I did. I decided that my bedtime was 10 p.m. and my wake up time was 6.
Yeah.
And regardless
Yep.
of what happened, I went to
Mm-hmm.
bed at 10 and I forced my ass out of bed at 6 every morning. And I did this and I still do this. On the weekends, I will allow myself to sleep in just a little bit, maybe till 7. But my clock
Mm-hmm.
is so regimented now
Yeah.
that it's like even like I was going to bed at 10:35. Like my friends like are like 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, you don't have to go to bed. I'm
Right.
going to bed. Like
Right.
it became a like this is there's no negotiation. I'm going to
Yeah.
be in and like if it's something special, maybe I'll stay up until 11. But
Right.
I'm like we're talking like
Once
Mariah
in a
Carey is
lifetime.
performing on Rockefeller
Yeah.
Christmas tree lighting ceremony, and I want to watch it type special, something like
Yes.
that. It's just 10 o'clock 6. That's it.
Yep.
But yeah, daydreaming. I had a thought, and it kind of went through my brain. Oh, we were
Well,
talking about.
oh god.
Go ahead.
I was
No,
gonna
you
say,
go
while
ahead.
you're grabbing your thought, I will just say that it's really awesome that you found a way to in your life to be able to have that regimented sleep hygiene, right? And that rhythm of sleep. It's super beneficial, and it is one of the things that a lot of sleep researchers and experts will say is guard your window of sleep and use it for sleep in the same way that you would like protect your child's life and want them to do the best thing possible in their life. Like, are there going to be moments where they mess up? Sure. Do you still love them? Yes. And would you still put your life in line for them? Yes. And so, like, that's the kind of thing where you just have to be that rigid about this is bedtime and this is wake time, especially in our modern society that runs on actual clocks where we're not using daylight to perform our work tasks or our life tasks. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we have to be very regimented in that to support our we have to hold those 8 hours in reserve for sleep to support the 16 hours that we want to live our lives.
And it's interesting that you say it like guard it because that is how I just feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started to achieve like actual regimented or rhythm sleep, if you will,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I didn't know this was possible. I didn't think this was ever a part of my life. I don't care what is happening. This will stay the same forever. And like, it just doesn't matter. Like, I don't care what's happening. I truly don't. Like midnight, I haven't seen a midnight in many, 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 many years. And on top of that,
January
um,
1st is still there, whether you see the fireworks or the ball drop.
exactly, exactly. I have not been awake for a New Year's in a really long time. So, like, I just go to sleep one year, wake up in the next. It's great. But yeah, so I think what I remember what we were talking about. We were talking about the journey and how it really never ends. And
Mm-mm.
when I would say that 35-year-old me and me today are so vastly different and that if we
Yes.
put the two in the same room, well, I would probably preach at my younger self and be like, but kindly, I'd be like, listen,
Right, but your younger self would think that you were so old-fashioned or such like a dud.
absolutely, like because I have become like an old sort of fuddy duddy in a way. But yeah, it's interesting, but it still takes work. Like there's still times that you slip up
Yeah.
and you notice old thought patterns sneaking in. And you're like, oh, hello
Mhm.
there. Nope, not today.
Not today, Satan.
Yes, there you go. Not today. But yeah, so now you recognize that you've been on the journey, you're still on the journey.
Yeah.
You've taken time to focus on things that you love, pursue other avenues of interest and
Yes.
creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of abandoned a 20-some year career in fundraising for nonprofit organizations. It was very successful, but it also was very stressful. And now I'm working at being a successful voiceover artist.
Love this. Like I
Yeah,
do,
and
I
speaker.
think that that's fantastic. The speaker thing, I have thought about it. I've visualized it perhaps one day.
Yeah.
But I have what I call performance anxiety.
Oh, sure.
And it is crippling, vomit inducing. And being like, I'm a consultant, so I work with large organizations and we're doing, lots of big projects and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if I know I have to present something, I can mentally sort of prepare myself and distract myself and like all that stuff. But even then, it's like, oh, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. I sweat. Like I am a sweater.
Oh no.
Yes. So like I was in a meeting not too long ago, and someone put me on this spot, and it's something I know inside and out that
Yep.
they asked me to speak to. And here I am showing them something and speaking to them, and there's like sweat just dripping down my forehead,
Oh.
and my friend, well, my colleague sent me a message. She's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine." Like, I get through.
Yeah. I never understood stage fright. That's not a thing that I ever understood. Stage fright or like that performance anxiety thing. I occasionally speed up. Like I know I get nervous and I speed up. Like I skip to the end. Like I get real excited. But yeah, I didn't really understand that until a very good friend of mine, like my dearest friend in high school, we were in a speech class together. Everyone was required. It was a required extracurricular, not extracurricular. It was a required, what do they call it? Core requirement of before graduation. It was this like speech class, right? We all had to take a speech class. And I was like, whatever. Like, I literally felt like a throwaway course. Like I was excited to learn a little bit about like debate techniques and stuff, or like rhetoric techniques, but I was like, this is going to be a piece of cake. And our first assignment was to just recite the words from a favorite song, or any song, right? Like it could be Happy Birthday. Like just get up and like recite the words of the song. And he managed to get up in front of the classroom and then bolted out of the back door of the room, which was outside, and threw up outside. And I like went running after him. I was like, what is going on? He's like, I told you I didn't want to do it. I was like, I did not understand how bad it was. So he's now in his life like a youth camp director and speaks to large groups of children and adults all the time. You can get over it, but like I will never forget that.
It's practice, like everything, right? It's practice and exposure therapy.
Yep.
And level setting with yourself and being like, what's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen?
Yeah. Right? What would be a win, and what's a loss that you can handle?
And honestly, most of the time I can get like pretty low and be like, I can still like survive from that. Like, I can survive from that. So like, let's just go do it. You have been a treat to talk to you today. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Helen Sernett. Sleepless.com. Go check out her podcast. I'm going to, for a little bit of zen in my life, and see if you can find her in something doing voice acting work, and you'll be like, oh, that's Helen. She was on my podcast.
Yeah, my voice is much more expressive when I'm not doing a Sleepless thing. So if you can recognize me when I'm doing my voiceover work, I will be excited and happy. That'd be awesome.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. For everyone at home, until next time, go out and live your wildest dreams. Talk soon.
Thanks.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@cksims.com or visit cksims.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.